StudyIQ IAS, अब तैयारी हुई अफोर्डेबल।
Hello and namaste. Today we're going to talk about will Middle East survive without oil? Middle East में अगर ऑयल खत्म हो जाता है या डिमांड ऑफ ऑयल खत्म हो जाता है तो क्या ये कंट्रीज जो हैं वो सरवाइव करेंगी? यही है आज का डिस्कशन का मुद्दा। शुरू करते हैं रशिया यूक्रेन क्राइसिस से। तो रशिया यूक्रेन क्राइसिस में ऐसा लगा था कि सऊदी अरेबिया इज गोइंग टू बी द मेजर विक्टर ऑफ द वॉर, दैट इज इट इज गोइंग टू बी द वन दैट इज द विनर। व्हाई? बिकॉज जो कंट्रीज यूरोपियन कंट्रीज हैं जिनको पहले रशिया से दे वर बाइंग द ऑयल, दे आर नाउ टर्निंग टुवर्ड्स सऊदी अरेबिया टू बाय मोर पेट्रोल. Similar with US also looking at Saudi Arabia for filling up its oil requirements. तो सडनली क्या हुआ था कि जो कोविड के पीरियड में ऑयल प्राइसेस ने एक फॉल लिया था, they had revived back and Saudi Arabia was again seen enjoying the benefits of having one of the largest proven reserves of hydrocarbons in the world. So Saudi Arabia का फिर से एक राइज आता है during the Russia-Ukraine crisis and यहाँ से शुरू होती है कि ये क्वेश्चन कि can this region actually survive post this oil boom? And this is what we are going to discuss. सबसे पहले शुरू करते हैं कि एक्चुअली ये ऑयल ओन कौन करता है। तो मिडिल ईस्ट में अगर देखा जाए तो दो पार्टीज हैं जो ऑयल ओन करती है। एक है ईरान। अब प्रॉब्लम ईरान के साथ है कि ईरान को हमेशा से सैंक्शंस पे रखा गया है, वेस्टर्न सैंक्शंस पे। इट हैज ऑलवेज बीन अंडर दैट, बिकॉज ऑफ विच इट हैज नॉट रियली बीन एबल टू exploit or explore its proven reserves. It has not been one of the major players because of that. So Iran does not actually have a very important say when it comes to today's oil market. The more important player is, of course, the Gulf Cooperation Council, which is made up of 6 countries. The bigger countries, of course, Saudi Arabia, Oman, you have UAE, then you have Qatar, you have Kuwait, and you have also Bahrain. तो ये जो 6 countries हैं, they make up GCC, and this is where these countries determine how the oil policy of Middle East is going to be determined. More interesting is all of these countries are monarchical countries. These countries are ruled by monarchs. Now, if we talk about the numbers, so as of 2020, as per the BP numbers, that is the British Petroleum numbers, around a third of the world's oil is produced in the Middle Eastern region, out of which GCC have a combined proven reserve of 497 billion barrels of crude oil, which represents around 34% of the world's estimated proven oil reserves, which is a huge number. So the question is then, if they have so much of reserve, and that is a proven reserve, why are we then talking about this question about a post-oil scenario? And the answer is that when the Russia-Ukraine crisis took place, obviously the countries of Europe started looking for alternatives. They went to Saudi Arabia, they went to Nigeria, they went to other countries to basically continue their supply of petroleum. But they also started taking radical decisions to shift towards renewable energy. That means in the coming future, that is in the near future, these countries are going to buy less and less oil, which also means that the amount of petrodollars flowing in this region is going to sharply come down. And that is the reason why these countries are slowly awakening to the possibility that there is going to come a time in future जब इनके पास petrodollars की कमी हो जाएगी. So now let's take a look at how much these GCC countries actually own. Out of these 6 countries, Bahrain and Oman are the countries which have the least amount of proven reserves. So if you look at it, Bahrain has only 0.01%, Oman has 0.4%. Next 25 years में Oman का at the current exploration rate, it is going to basically finish off its reserves. So Bahrain and Oman के ऊपर already pressure आने लगा है कि भैया आप you move towards diversification as rapidly as possible, वरना आपका petrodollar supply रुकने वाला है within couple of years. Bahrain is already facing that crisis. ओमान के पास तभी भी 20-25 साल का टाइम है, but तभी भी 20-25 साल is not exactly a big timeline when it comes to a diversifying economy. Now, the next, of course, is when we talk about the other countries, that is Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, and UAE, the amount of hydrocarbons which play an important role in their GDP is above 70%, except for Saudi Arabia, which is 68%, and UAE, which is 36%. So if you look at it amongst the GCC countries, UAE ने तभी भी काफ़ी एफर्ट किया है अपने इकोनॉमी को डाइवर्सिफाई करने के लिए, एंड दैट इज़ वाई इट हैज़ बीन एबल टू पुश अक्रॉस रिड्यूस्ड डिपेंडेंसी ऑन पेट्रोडॉलर्स टू 36%, वाइल एवरी अदर कंट्री का जो रेवेन्यू है it is largely dependent on hydrocarbons, which again brings us to the question that what will happen when the petrodollars start drying up, and that is where these countries are coming up with their plans of diversification. So if you look at it, these countries are monarchical countries, और इन countries को rentier state भी कहा जाता है. ये जो rentier state है, this concept was given by Iranian economist Hussein Mahdavi. Now, what does this concept talk about? It says that a government that does not take taxes from its citizens, it is basically selling or renting out its land and its resources to others. That means जो major revenue source है वो अपने resources को बेच के आ रहा है rather than tax system. That is basically a rentier state. Now, आप जब हम GCC कंट्रीज़ की बात करते हैं, ये जो कंट्रीज़ हैं ये अपने हाइड्रोकार्बन्स को, नेचुरल गैस एंड पेट्रोलियम को बेच के दे हैव गॉट ह्यूज अमाउंट ऑफ रेवेन्यू, एंड that means this revenue takes care of all the government policies. They are not dependent on the tax money from its citizens. They actually do not tax the citizens at all. So there is no need for legitimacy, because अगर आपने सोचो कि टैक्स लिया तो आपको लोगों के लिए कुछ करना पड़ेगा. Why otherwise why would the people give tax to the government, right? So there is of course a give and take when there is a tax system involved, but when it comes to a rentier state, that give and take is completely gone. There is no need for legitimacy. On the other hand, because the government is so dependent on external revenue coming in, उनको टैक्स की ज़रूरत ही नहीं है. दैट मीन्स उनको लोगों का कुछ अच्छा लगना या नहीं लगना उनको कोई फ़ायदा फर्क ही नहीं पड़ता है उनको, right? So it becomes an absolute monarchy, it becomes an absolute authority. They do not need the legitimacy of the people, and that is exactly what has happened with the GCC countries as well. So they have given welfare policies after welfare policies. कहा जाता है कि from cradle to grave, that is from birth to death, हर इंसान के लिए वेलफेयर पॉलिसीज है जीसीसी कंट्रीज में. सपोर्ट सिस्टम दिया गया है, एजुकेशन, बर्थ, डेथ, हेल्थ, सब चीज़ों के लिए गवर्नमेंट ने फ्री कर दिया है अपने सिटीजन्स के लिए. सो द सिटीजन्स आर टेकन केयर ऑफ, बट ये जो खर्चा है, दैट इज एक्सपेंडिचर, इज टेकन केयर बाय द पेट्रोडॉलर्स, एंड व्हेन दिस पेट्रोडॉलर्स कम डाउन, ये खर्चा करने में दिक्कत होने वाली है. Government is going to start restricting these policies, which means that the people are going to get angry at the government, which also means the people are going to start questioning the government. यहाँ पे, as it's a monarchical system, the people are going to start questioning the king and its family. कि भैया, why are we not getting the policies which we are getting earlier? And that is what the fear is, because पहले भी इस रीजन में एक पॉपुलर प्रोटेस्ट आया था, दैट इज नोन एज द अरब स्प्रिंग, एंड द अरब स्प्रिंग वाज वेरी क्रूशियल बिकॉज पीपल केम टुगेदर टू डिमांड अ डेमोक्रेटिक गवर्नमेंट by removing the monarchical government. बट उस समय पे ये पॉपुलर प्रोटेस्ट दबा दिया गया था. स्पेशली बहरीन में जो आया था उसने सऊदी अरेबिया का मोनार्क का काफ़ी इंपॉर्टेंट रोल था टू सप्रेस द पॉपुलर प्रोटेस्ट, एंड उसके बदले में लोगों को वेलफेयर स्कीम्स दी गई थी कि भैया आप वेलफेयर स्कीम से खुश रहो, डू नॉट क्वेश्चन द गवर्नमेंट. बट टुडे व्हेन दैट पॉलिसी स्टार्ट फ्लक्चुएटिंग, people are going to come up and start questioning. They are going to protest, and this is a political crisis waiting to happen, right? So this is the problem with a rentier state. Moving on, if we talk about the predictions, internationally क्या बोला जा रहा है? Internationally IMF की रिपोर्ट है, 2018 की रिपोर्ट है, जहाँ पे ये बोला गया है कि अगर ये अरब कंट्रीज डाइवर्सिफाई नहीं करती है, डाइवर्सिफाई एट द अर्लीस्ट नहीं कर पाती है, तो अरब कंट्रीज में प्रॉब्लम्स आएंगी. दे आर गोइंग टू फिनिश ऑफ देयर financial wealth which is of $2 trillion USD, and if they do not invest it properly, they do not diversify properly, the Arab countries are going to start faltering. तो काफी grim prediction है by the IMF report. इसी को सपोर्ट करता है 2020 का ब्रुकिंग्स इंस्टीट्यूट रिपोर्ट, जो कहता है कि अगर फिर से यही बात होती है कि 2040 के बाद ये रेवेन्यूज, दैट इज द पेट्रो डॉलर्स, आर गोइंग टू कम डाउन. 2040 तक हाँ एक डिमांड रहेगा, बट कंट्रीज आर steadily moving away from hydrocarbon dependency, moving towards renewable energy. And that means that कि जितना अभी एक फ्लो है पेट्रो डॉलर्स का, वो धीरे धीरे ड्राई आउट होगा. 2040 में पीक आएगा, उसके बाद से डिक्लाइन आने लगेगा. एंड दैट इज द प्रेडिक्शन बाय ब्रुकिंग्स इंस्टीट्यूट. जब ये डिक्लाइन आएगा, देन द पर्शियन गल्फ और द गल्फ कंट्रीज हैव टू बी रेडी टू एक्सेप्ट दैट हिट. तो इसीलिए अभी से उनको डाइवर्सिफाई करना पड़ेगा. दे हैव टू ब्रिंग इन अदर एवेन्यूज ऑफ रेवेन्यू rather than depend on petroleum or natural gas. Now, itna grim prediction pe the countries have of course taken action. They have taken various plans to diversify. So, Saudi Arabia का vision 2030 है, Abu Dhabi का economic vision 2030 है, Qatar national vision is 2030, Kuwait vision is 2035, ओमान का विजन 2040. ये नेशनल पॉलिसीज हैं जहां पे इन कंट्रीज ने डिसाइड किया है हाउ टू बेसिकली डाइवर्सिफाई. अब प्रॉब्लम यहाँ पे आती है, इन सब पॉलिसीज में जो फोकस किया गया है कि टूरिज्म पे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बनाया जाएगा. दे आर गोइंग टू मेक इट एन अट्रैक्टिव टूरिस्ट डेस्टिनेशन. व्हाई? बिकॉज यहाँ पे you cannot have an agricultural setup. The land is not conducive for agriculture. Two, for so long skilled labor नहीं create किया गया है इन countries में, because जब भी कोई काम आया है, they have brought in diaspora from outside and the diaspora has worked. So basically from blue collar jobs to white collar jobs सभी expats है जो काम करते हैं. Saudi Arabia में तो less than 40% of the local citizens are actually employed. Rest are all dependent on the government policy, welfare schemes. So, what are we talking about? That a majority of our population are not skilled enough to take up any kind of sector, even service sector. उसके अलावा अगर हम बात करते हैं कोई नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज की या कोई और मिनरल्स की, there is of course that potential, but that is not going to replace hydrocarbons. इसीलिए इनके पास और कोई ऑप्शन नहीं है बट टू क्रिएट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फॉर टूरिज्म. अब प्रॉब्लम विद टूरिज्म इज, जैसे फॉरेन पॉलिसी का एक आर्टिकल कहता है, दीज आर वैनिटी प्रोजेक्ट्स. वैनिटी प्रोजेक्ट्स मतलब खुद को अच्छा दिखाने के लिए प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं, बट दीज आर ओवर द टॉप. Right? So आपके सामने these are the pictures of the new city in Saudi Arabia called NEOM, plus the Trijon infrastructure that is being built. अब इसको ski resort बनाया जा रहा है for tourists to come, for new industries to be set up, new business houses to come in. So it is being made as a very lucrative, very interesting investment option. But the problem is two things. The problem is one, that it requires a lot of investment. If the entire sovereign wealth is put into this, that is जो भी 2 trillion USD का हम बात कर रहे हैं, ये सब वैनिटी प्रोजेक्ट्स में चला जाएगा, तो वेलफेयर स्कीम्स का क्या होने वाला है. दूसरी बात, अभी तक these countries have a very rigid rules on human rights, on rights pertaining women, and even rights pertaining to their social system. Right? Saudi Arabia ने of course decisions ली हैं, जैसे कि it has allowed women to drive, it has amended the guardian system जहाँ पे women are allowed to go out of the house without a male guardian. It has also abolished gender segregation. तो ऐसे कई rules हो रही हैं. But the problem is the larger section of the society still follows these rules, and the monarchy is also based on these rules. तो ये इतनी जल्दी सोशल रेवोल्यूशन नहीं लेके आ सकते हैं जहां पे सडनली दे ओपन अप द सोसाइटी एंड अलाउ इन्वेस्टमेंट, फॉरेन इन्वेस्टमेंट टू फ्लो इन एंड हैव इंस्टीट्यूशंस, राइट? सो that is one of the bigger hurdles that is happening in Middle East right now. और एक एग्जाम्पल लेते हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल जो फीफा वर्ल्ड कप था, फीफा वर्ल्ड कप होने से पहले ही कई सारा क्रिटिसिज्म आया था अबाउट द ह्यूमन राइट्स अब्यूज ऑफ लेबर्स हु बिल्ट द फीफा स्टेडियम, एंड इमीडिएटली कतर हैड टू गो ऑन अ बैक स्टेप एंड से कि नहीं नहीं ऐसा कुछ नहीं था, इट्स अ नरेटिव, इट्स अ रॉन्ग नरेटिव, rather than saying that it is actually based on human rights abuse of labor, because there were lots of laborers who actually died due to the inhuman working conditions while building the FIFA stadiums. Despite that, of course, the FIFA World Cup took place, but तभी भी काफी criticism आया था on how Qatar handled this whole international event. So, unless these countries, as part of their vision plans, change the way society functions, changes the rules of society, investment आना बहुत मुश्किल होने वाला है. And if they use their own fund, how will they then pay for the other kinds of policies that they are having? So इसीलिए फॉरेन पॉलिसी मैगजीन ने कहा है ये कुछ नहीं है, ये सिर्फ वैनिटी प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं. Nothing concrete is actually going to come out of it. Right. So let's move on to why is this going to be a failure. So I've already explained that it's a vanity project and people are going to protest about it and so on and so forth. But the problem is that abhi bhi, at this point of time, these countries are so dependent on petrodollars that by the time we see, that is another 20 to 30 years mein, the diversification is not really going to take place. So what are we talking about? We are talking about a situation jahan pe ye countries are going to start faltering. They are going to start looking at avenues of getting investment जो नहीं flow करने वाला है. दूसरी बात है खुद का sovereign fund खत्म करने लगेंगे, which basically means that they are going to try everything in their means to kind of keep their people happy, but on the other hand इनका sovereign wealth fund कम होता रहेगा, which is going to be a challenge for the monarchies. And तीसरी बात ये है जो आज के दिन GCC का एक वैल्यू है as the movers and shakers of the oil market, वो भी धीरे धीरे खत्म होते रहेगा. So to sum it up, अगर हम बात करें, oil खत्म नहीं होने वाला है. Proven reserves जो है, it is going to be there, but the declining oil demand is going to put a question mark on the future of Middle East. And right now, as per the policies, they are not heading towards a success story. It looks as if Middle East is bound to collapse, and the way it is going to happen is through a popular protest, because history tells us that this region is highly volatile when it comes to popular protests, especially something like the Arab Spring. With this, we come to an end to today's discussion. Thank you.
StudyIQ IAS. अब तैयारी हुई अफोर्डेबल.